Hi, I'm personal trainer YUJI.
Yes, what I just mentioned is the deadlift, a type of strength training exercise that I believe everyone is familiar with. When you think of the deadlift, what comes to mind? What do you consider? Typically, people think of it as an exercise to strengthen the lower back. While that is true, it is not sufficient. There is much more to it. Conversely, some people might say that the deadlift is bad for the lower back. This is not the case. It's not that it's bad, but I want you to do deadlifts to improve your lower back. When we talk about deadlifts, it usually involves lifting something from the ground up. However, this can vary depending on the situation, so it's not just about that. Some people might express it as leaning forward, but thinking of leaning forward in this context can lead to misunderstandings. First and foremost, it's about strengthening the lower back. When considering what is bad for the lower back, those who currently have a hernia and struggle to get up or move around do not need to do deadlifts. However, for those who can normally stand, squat, walk, and pick up things from the ground without any issues, I definitely think they should do deadlifts. This is my opinion, and it is not specifically about having a hernia. I usually live my life normally, but I suddenly developed lower back pain, which is often referred to as acute lower back pain. The cause of this is that the strength of my lower back and abdominal muscles is weak, making it prone to acute lower back pain. Additionally, a lack of flexibility in the lower back can also lead to acute lower back pain. So, to be honest, it's better to strengthen the lower back. To do that, it's advisable to perform deadlifts, but of course, it depends on doing them correctly. It's important not to perform them incorrectly. While deadlifts are primarily for strengthening the lower back, they also have other benefits. They directly strengthen the lower back while simultaneously working the abdominal muscles. Furthermore, they help tone the back and consume a large amount of energy, since they engage not only the lower back, but also the glutes, thighs, lower back, abdomen, and arms. You end up using a lot of muscles, which naturally leads to heavy breathing due to the energy expenditure. This makes it an effective exercise for toning the body. Additionally, it improves your posture. Well, I will explain this a bit later, but as I think about various aspects, I find no reason not to do deadlifts. I mentioned that it depends on how you perform the deadlift, and I would like to explain the movements involved. First, I would like you to use dumbbells or a barbell for this exercise. For women, around 5 kilo dumbbells would be appropriate, and for men, about 8 to 10 kilo dumbbells. If you are a beginner, I recommend starting with these weights. Honestly, having taught deadlifts for over 30 years, I can say that with these weights, I have not seen anyone get injured in front of me. So, starting with this weight should not pose any problems. Now, what is the deadlift? It involves a specific movement, and regarding the form of this movement, as I mentioned earlier, if you observe this movement from a distance, when it comes to bending and lifting the body, it can sometimes become just an image in your mind, but that's not the point. First of all, the movement doesn't start from above. We need to think about it from below. First, let's focus on the feet. You start from position C. You enter from your feet. For the foot width, you should set it to about shoulder width. Essentially, your shoulders should fit snugly within this width, or it should be about shoulder width apart. This should feel stable, and regarding the direction of your toes, since your feet are shoulder width apart, they will be slightly wider than your shoulders, pointing a little outward. However, some people may point their feet too far outward, so it should be about shoulder width, with a slight outward angle of about 15 degrees. That's the general idea. When it comes to the weight distribution on the soles of your feet, if you focus too much on the heels, your toes may lift off the ground, leading to an improper stance. It's not just about the heels. You should also engage the entire area around the heel. You want to feel like you are pressing down with the whole foot, not just the toes. While the toes can touch the floor, the key is to press down with the entire foot. I see. So it's not just about putting your weight on your heels and feeling like the balls of your feet are floating. It feels more like pressing down with your whole foot. You don't need to lift your toes. It's fine to keep them down. While actually performing the movement, the position of the knees is important. The shins should remain vertical, and as the knees bend and the hips move back, the knees should not move forward, causing the shins to extend forward. If you visualize bending the knees in a way that leads to this position, it can result in improper form. Although the knees are bent, they remain in a neutral position. Essentially, it feels like being vertically aligned without any changes. similar to being in water. Of course, this does not mean leaning back at an angle. Here, practicing the movement is essential. When doing this, it's common to have the image of falling forward every day, but it's not about leaning forward. Instead, it's about lifting the chest up while maintaining that position. You close your back like this. Lift your chest and close your back. Once your back is closed, the upper body should be fixed from the ribs up. The ribs are sticking out from here, and once you fix this position, you don't change anything, meaning you don't do anything. Once you tighten and fix this, the movement is happening from the ribs down. From the ribs down to the knees, this middle part is what you should feel moving. Ultimately, the lower legs do not move at all. From here, nothing is done. Although nothing is done, the intermediate part is being pulled out, which makes the upper body appear to lean forward. By pulling this part out, the back remains tight, but the upper body takes on a leaning position. It's not about leaning forward on your own. Rather, you are tightening and lifting, but because you are pulling out, it feels like you are leaning forward. So, because you are pulling here, if you keep the knees neutral, the thighs will... As the situation progresses, the abdominal area from the hip joint to the rib cage will be in a diagonal position pulled back. This is the action of pulling the barbell. Imagine leaning forward while lifting the chest to pull the barbell in. When I do this, if there is a mirror in front of me, I tend to visualize leaning forward, but I should instead create an image of myself viewed from the side, focusing on pulling the midsection while relaxing the knees. This is the correct way to visualize the movement. First, it is important to move while keeping that sequence in mind. Now, when we talk about pulling, if you only focus on that, you might end up in a state where your toes lift and your shins move backward, which can disrupt your balance. Instead, while you are pulling, you also need to have the sensation of pushing down. It should feel like a firm push, almost like a squish, squish, squish sensation. This way, you maintain your stability. Earlier, I mentioned that the heel of the foot rolls outward, creating a sensation of pressing down from the heel all the way to the ball of the big toe. It's a feeling of pressing, this sensation of pressing down while simultaneously lifting. It feels like force is being applied at the same time as pressing and lifting. So it's not just about moving backward, but also about applying force downward to create tension in the lower body. This downward force is very important, so please make sure to focus on it while performing the exercise. This stability is always necessary, because you are stabilizing. When you lift, you should push down even harder while raising your arms. Therefore, it's not just about the upper body. As I mentioned earlier, it fundamentally involves the lower body as well. You want to push through your lower body here. Separate the soles of your feet from the dumbbells as if you are pulling them apart. It becomes a movement, right? Well, as you imagine that, you can feel the entire foot pressing down. And earlier, I mentioned tightening the back. I did tighten it, but honestly, at this moment, it tends to loosen a bit. It inevitably goes back. But from here, you need to tighten it again. Tighten it again, instead of tightening it after you lift. You should incorporate this tightening movement from here. So, take a breath, expand your chest, exhale, and tighten your back while inhaling. By exhaling while rising, you combine the movement of lifting and closing. When you reach this position, it is crucial to ensure that your back does not round. Maintain the vertical arch of your spine, keeping the contraction strong and controlled. As you inhale deeply, you should feel the strengthening effect become more pronounced. By expanding and opening the chest, the back tightens, and this is how you rise. If you can't breathe properly, it will end up like this. So by inhaling, you maintain an open state while ensuring the chest doesn't drop. Therefore, while stepping, it feels like you are lifting the pectoral muscles and the ribs together. In this movement, it's not just the back that is being used. When you inhale and rise, how do you exhale while engaging the ribs and the entire abdomen? You lift not just from the front, but you close everything from the side to the front as you lift. It feels like you are tightening here. And exhaling while lifting. So, it's not just the muscles in the back. You should lift with your entire body tightly engaged, exhaling as you rise. When you reach the top, remember to maintain that tightness. Instead of resting, keep that tightness as you lift. Take another breath in while maintaining that tightness as you lift. When you exhale and tighten your core while lifting, your ribs should not drop. You should be in a state where your ribs are tightened as you lift. There shouldn't be a situation where they are protruding forward. A common mistake is thinking that just lifting the ribs is sufficient. Some people tend to let their ribs pop out too much while their core is overly contracted. Instead, you should tighten and lift, maintaining that tightness throughout the movement. It's crucial to keep this tension and continue without letting your strength fade or losing that tightness. By doing this, you can prevent issues. When standing up, maintain the posture of closing and lifting. This helps develop the muscles. By improving the posture that uses the lower back and abdomen, you not only perform the deadlift but also enhance your posture. If you focus on proper form and start with a weight that is not too heavy, there is no risk of injury. There is no need to lift excessively heavy weights. Just using a weight that you feel comfortable with can still be very effective. This exercise is quite beneficial. That's a good point. Well, if I add one more thing, it's about very tall individuals. For women who are over 170 centimeters and men who are around 180 to 185 centimeters or taller, their form changes a bit because they have longer legs. Honestly, very tall people cannot maintain the same form as someone who is 170 centimeters. Shorter individuals can do it, but taller ones cannot. In the case of taller individuals, the distance becomes an issue, which makes it difficult. Ishizaka, it might come out a bit. Well, there's nothing we can do about that. If we are cautious to the extent I just mentioned, it's understandable if the knees come out a bit. So, like I saw on TV with player Otani, there are people who have their knees coming out a little, and the bar is a bit special, but he had his knees out. However, given his height, that form works for him. That's fine. But for someone of average height, if you can perform it without the knees coming out, you can avoid injuring your knees or lower back and still achieve a lot of benefits when done correctly. Therefore, I really want people in their 50s to definitely try this and not avoid deadlifts. So, for those who are listening, please try to do it while keeping proper form. I believe that doing this will improve your overall body condition. Let's do our best. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm an instructor, so please follow me. If you need a password, it's YUJI.